In 2001, I wrote a little screenplay called Church State. It was a screenplay that would eventually become After Twilight. I had no idea the extent of the journey I was about to go on with that story.
That 12-page screenplay was destined to manifest itself in the forms of a short film, a comic book series, and a feature film script.
The story of After Twilight is basically an exploration of what would happen if the wall of separation of church and state were breached and a Taliban-style government arose in the state of Texas and creating a separate Christian nation. It's an idea that I explored, that I worked on and developed over a couple of years. And finally in 2003, I decided I wanted to turn this screenplay into a short film.
Enter Richard Alvarez and Sandra Yates, who shared Gary's vision and worked with him to realize After Twilight as a short film in 2004.
When I first met Richard, he was an award-winning screenwriter, and I was eager to have him take a look at the short screenplay for After Twilight.
It had a very dark element to it. The characters and their motivations were very dark, but even in their darkness, they were appealing to me because of what they were struggling against.
Stories with strong women characters, I've always gravitated towards them.
The more I got into this project, the more it meant to me, and the more I believed in the value of the story. So eventually it became the central focus of my work.
New Classic Films was formed to produce After Twilight, and a volunteer cast and crew from Houston were assembled for the 5-day shoots. The result was a striking black and white homage to the film noir thrillers of the 1940s that carries a cautionary message about the dangers of combining religion and government.
And when I saw the rushes of that black and white film, and I saw the acting and I heard the words, I thought, this really could work as a feature.
The story of After Twilight has at its core a universal truth that we want to impart to the audience.
Encouraged by audience and film festival response, it was decided to take the project to the next step, a feature-length screenplay.
Once we had made the commitment to do a feature-length version of the screenplay, it was Richard who took the first stab at doing an expanded draft of the storyline. But eventually, all three of us made contributions as a team to bring the story and the characters to life.
Movie making ultimately is a very collaborative process.
It was really interesting getting the first draft from Richard. It was exciting, actually, that just seeing how the story unfolded and how he saw it. Writing the script was actually kind of like a fun day at work. We would just project the script on the screen and go through it line by line. And then the action scenes were like, how do we describe how she hits the guy with a platter? How does she throw a bowl of gruel? You know, so we would get out and kind of act it out and see how she would try to, you know, you get the tray and then how does she get the knee into the groin, because you always have to end with the knee to the groin, I think.
We were pretty well convinced that the story was locked in time. If we didn't get it done by then, it would go bad, it would spoil. What we have since learned in the intervening 8 years is that it's an evergreen theme.
As far as the politics of the story goes, we could never stay ahead of the reality curve. Outrageous things that we would imagine in the screenplay would show up in the newspaper eventually, weeks or months later. We just found out that Texas politics was the gift that kept on giving.
Texans know how to run Texas.
A Christian land, governed by Christian principles.
Texas has yet to learn submission to any oppression.
Stepping off into secession may in fact be a bloody war.
He's calling all Americans of all walks of life to seek him, to return to him.
We're part of a movement that is growing, that is gaining strength, that is building momentum, and we will not be ignored. I'm talking about states' rights. States' rights.
And that's why the story's always going to be relevant.
Raising money for a feature film is a daunting task. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of money.
As a screenwriter, you to a certain extent, you limit yourself by the realities of budget. How could this be portrayed on screen?
A comic book is a much more affordable process to go through to tell a story.
If your story is going to be shown in a graphic novel, you can have a crowd of 600. You know, you're not limited by a budget for the image itself. When Gary decided to take this story into the world of graphic novels, I had no idea that it would be almost as fulfilling, or fulfilling in a different way, to see the vision come to fruition as artwork.
Creating a comic book is similar to directing a film, but there are some important differences. If you're directing a film, you've got a whole cast of characters. You have a whole crew of people. When you're doing the comic book, you have one person who is all of those people. Doug is all the characters. He's all the actors in the story. He's all of the crew doing the lighting and creating the settings.
Basically, we use the short film as the main guide in establishing the look and feel of the piece. And this story is, it's very much influenced by the amount of light and lots of shadows and long bits of darkness.
One scene that really struck me was the police station scene where Jen comes in and the blinds just stripe the whole frame. And it reminded me of the film noir movies that I enjoyed watching. They always use light.
There's a frame where we see Jessie in silhouette and she's whittling something. And then several frames later, we see she's whittling on a cross. When I saw that, I got chills, because this is something the artist brought to it. It was more than I imagined.
What I liked most about the project was being able to include little details into the background, especially the graffiti, where I get to put in little messages and let my gallow humor show out, especially in the book 4, page 15, where Jen's in the prison cell. And then also throughout the book, I've managed to put in a couple of people that I know. Gary, he made his appearance in the first book as a wiretapper. Because it's not your typical superhero story, it gives you a much greater range of emotions. There's a little bit of humor, there's a little bit of sadness and tragedy, and a lot of suspense. And it's not just two people in tight underwear screaming at each other and throwing things at each other.
We knew we had serious content that we wanted to tell the audience, but we wanted to make sure it was an entertaining story for the audience to watch. So we set out to design an adventure, a thriller, an action picture that would be enjoyable on the surface level. But we had all of this other content, this political and social content that we wanted to go underneath that story for the audience to dig into.
This country has a long tradition of cartoonists using political satire dating all the way back to the country's founding.
And we've been very pleased to find that our readers have embraced the political and social content of After Twilight. And I think what that means is that people who read comic books are looking for good stories, good writing, stories that have depth and meaning and issues that they can dig into.
It's not specifically for people who are atheists. It's not specifically for people who are steeped in a specific religion. It's about a fight against oppression. Anyone who is concerned with oppression will want to read this book.
We've been very pleased with the response of the readers of the After Twilight comic book series, and we believe that the next natural step for the story is to create a feature film. We've got the screenplay, we think it's a great story, and we believe that there will be an enthusiastic audience out there waiting to see After Twilight on the big screen.